So you got the bad news that you've got heart disease. Or maybe your doctor's told you that your cholesterol is way too high. Or possibly, you've got a really bad family history with this disease process. Or worse yet, maybe you've had your first heart attack. And you're worried. And you should be. With 18 million individuals in America over the age of 20 affected by heart disease, it is our #1 killer, with a staggering 700,000 Americans losing their lives in 2022 alone. To put that in perspective, that's more than 10 football stadiums worth of people that lost their lives last year alone to this disease process. Worse yet, and I don't mean to be a downer, 1.1 million Americans experienced a heart attack last year. That's the population of Montana. And for many of them, their first symptom of having heart disease was that heart attack. Woo! I'm getting chest pain just thinking about all this. So one of the first things you might experience when you find out you have heart disease is that your doctor prescribes a statin medication for you and mentions that you're going to have to be on this medication for the rest of your life. If you're a person like me that prefers to do things through lifestyle changes and healthy habits versus taking a medication for your entire life, I think this episode of the Form of Fitness channel is going to be very interesting for you. To start this off, I want to get into my own personal story with heart disease because I think it's going to illustrate two different lessons that you're going to find informative. I'm Dr. Ben Quist. Let's get into the surprising results of when I finally went on a statin. So sit back and relax. Let me tell you my story. It all started about 5 years ago when I got a diagnosis of heart disease. Now, I have always exercised. I've always eaten what I thought to be a healthy diet. I've always been thin, so I never felt that I had any type of a issue with heart disease, but I did have a significant family history of it. At this point in the story, I was in my 40s, I had small children at home, I had a wife and a family, and because I had that bad family history, I thought, gosh, I had better get this checked out. So I decided to see a cardiologist to make sure that I didn't have any heart disease. And I want to say this, to be clear, I felt this was just a precautionary measure. I really felt that my lifestyle choices, the way I was doing everything was really going to protect me from heart disease. So I was in for a little bit of a shock. So when I went into the doctor, he basically looked at 3 different things. He looked at blood work, which all of that came back in the normal range, basically. He had me do a stress test, which I passed with flying colors, no problem. And the third thing that he did is I had a heart scan. And that one was a little bit of a different story. I didn't do so hot on the heart scan. Now, what a heart scan is, it's a test that measures the amount of calcium in your coronary arteries. And it gives you an idea of the severity of your coronary artery disease and really whether you have it or not to begin with. So it's a direct measure. So unlike tests like your blood work for triglycerides, your cholesterol levels, your blood pressure, all those things are indirect measures. They might indicate that there's possibly a problem, but with a heart scan, it really directly tells you if there is a problem. So that's lesson number 1 from my cautionary tale. Don't rely on indirect measures like blood work or a stress test to tell you whether or not you have a problem like heart disease. You need to go a little bit deeper. If I had relied just on those 2 different types of testing styles, I might not have known I had a problem and I might not be here today. So looking at something like a heart scan where it actually directly measures whether you actually have coronary artery disease or have a problem or not is a much better route to go. Quick side note on heart scans. These tests are inexpensive, you don't need a doctor's script to get one, and they're available at most major medical centers or hospitals. Frankly, it shocks me that they are not a standard screening test in middle age, similar to a colonoscopy or a mammogram. Imagine how many more lives could be saved if this inexpensive, extremely easy test to do was implemented on a broader scale. Okay, back to the story. So over the last 5 years since I got my diagnosis, I have read every book, every research article, I've watched every YouTube video I could get my hands on about coronary artery disease, in addition to going to a cardiologist and a functional medicine doctor. So I've got some bad news. Coronary artery disease is progressive, meaning it's either going to keep getting worse slowly or quickly until you have an event. And by an event, I mean a heart attack, a stroke, or a procedure. So not good, right? But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a significant body of information and evidence that supports that you can really slow the progression, or some people even believe stop it. After my 5-year deep dive into heart disease, I've got to admit, I really find the whole process fascinating. And by process, I mean heart disease. And it's because of little gems like this. Let me tell you a secret. Come in a little closer. They don't even really know what causes heart disease. There's still significant debate on that topic. So great debate still rages as to what is the exact cause of heart disease. It's your cholesterol levels, right? They're too high. Oh wait, maybe, no, wait, it's your blood sugar. Your blood sugar levels are out of control and you've got diabetes. Oh wait, no, that's not it. It's too much oxidative stress on your body. What? No, it's not the oxidative stress. It's just that there's too much stress in general. You're stressed out. That's what's causing it, right? Wait, no, it's your diet. You're eating too much saturated fat. Nope. You're eating not enough saturated fat and you're eating way too many sugars. No. It's the processed food and the refined sugar, right? Nope. It's that you're not exercising. Oh wait, you're exercising too much. That's what's causing it, right? Oh, no. It's that your blood pressure's high. Your blood pressure's through the roof. That's what's causing it. Oh, or maybe it just comes down to you have really bad genes. Nope, that's not it. Maybe it's a combination of all those factors together. Whew. All right, you get the point. It's somewhat confusing. Maybe a topic for another day. So the standard treatment for heart disease typically is to go on a statin medication, get your cholesterol down to the lowest level possible for the rest of your life. But when we listen to all the information that's out there about statin medications, you might have some concerns. Do they have really bad side effects? Are they going to cause you to get early onset dementia? Are they going to cause muscle pain? There have even been authors that have written entire books that your cholesterol levels have nothing to do with heart disease. No one is arguing that statin medications are not incredibly effective at lowering your cholesterol levels. What many people are arguing is that cholesterol levels do not track with your risk of heart disease. Additionally, that statins do not affect any of the blood markers that do meaningfully track with your risk of heart disease. So this is where my story ends and my research study with me begins. Let's go see local cardiologist Josh Liberman and see, are there any blood markers that actually do track with your risk of heart attack or stroke? So I'm here with Dr. Josh Liberman, cardiologist. So thank you for talking to me today.
Absolutely.
Wanted to ask you a couple different questions that are kind of relevant to my study, my case study of one person that I'm doing on myself. So first and foremost, what are your thoughts on, I know I've heard and many doctors really put a lot of weight into total cholesterol measurements. So do those measurements actually correlate with heart disease or heart attacks or things of that nature? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So for many years, for decades, certainly in the 70s and 80s and 90s, we thought that the routine fasting lipid panel that calculated total cholesterol was the most useful way of identifying somebody's heart disease risk. Certainly over the last 20 years, research has not really borne out that is the most accurate way of identifying somebody who's at risk and identifying their risk level. Lots of research has shown that actually total cholesterol is not a great predictor of risk. And so there's aspects on that panel that aren't even really useful anymore.
Total cholesterol or the way LDL is measured in a standard panel isn't as helpful at determining whether you actually have a true risk factor for heart disease. Are there blood measures that actually do give us a better idea of if we should be worried about having heart disease?
Absolutely. Functionally, there's three other ways we can measure somebody's kind of true level of risk when it comes to cholesterol issues, that is. One is something called the non-HDL calculation, non-HDL cholesterol, which is a simple calculation, which is why the routine fasting lipid panel that all doctors get can still be useful. That's just the total cholesterol number on that panel minus the HDL number on that panel, and that gives you a more accurate way of measuring LDL cholesterol. And lots of research has shown that is more predictive than relying on the other indices there. That said, it's not as predictive as some other tests. And the other, as I said, there were three tests. The other two are, one is called the apolipoprotein B level, and the other is LDL particle number, usually determined by what's called NMR technology. The apolipoprotein B level, what is that? Apolipoprotein B is just simply a protein. It just happens to be the fact that there's one of these proteins on every type of bad low-density lipoprotein, very low-density lipoprotein, any of the bad lipoproteins, the ones that are what we call atherogenic, that lead to the buildup of plaque. Each one of these atherogenic molecules has exactly one ApoB molecule on it. So it's as if God created a very, very easy way of counting how many of these bad particles you have and being able to assess somebody's risk. And the higher your ApoB level is, the higher your risk is. The lower it is, the lower the risk is. And we have decades worth of research that shows that corroborates and proves that fact.
That's a very good. That's very well explained. Are these tests expensive? Are they hard to get? Is one better than another, or which ones do you kind of hang your hat on?
So really, the data suggests that the predictive capability of apolipoprotein B, or otherwise known as ApoB, because we don't want to keep saying that, or LDL particle number by NMR, the predictive capability is equal between those two. The problem is that the NMR, the LDL-P, the lipoprotein particle number, is a proprietary technology that's licensed out to most labs. And as a result, it becomes very expensive. And historically, insurances have been reluctant to pay for it, saying it's experimental when it's really not. That said, the ApoB is an easy test. It's not a patented or proprietary technology, and it only costs $25 at most labs to do.
So those two tests are pretty comparable in their value, but one is just a lot less expensive.
Exactly. So as a practicing preventive cardiologist, I used to exclusively order the NMR test for a very long time, for almost a decade. But then the research caught up and really showed that ApoB was as good, if not better, but with the added benefit of being darn cheap, like just dirt cheap to do.
One more question for you. So with statins, and this is more of a personal interest question, and you and I have discussed this before in our meetings, as you are my doctor. So if someone takes a statin, where do you feel we are on the research right now? Do statins have a measurable, and I'll preface this by saying, in the population group that has heart disease, meaning people have been identified, they either had a heart attack or they've had an event, do statins, or they have a positive coronary artery calcium score, do those individuals receive good benefit from taking a statin? You know, is it a sizable benefit? Is it a small benefit? Is there no benefit? What have you seen, or what? With the
so statins are the most well-studied class of medicine in history, hands down. Over hundreds of thousands of patients in randomized controlled trials over the years. The first statin came out in 1987. It was called lovastatin. So we're going on, nearing 40 years of experience. There's 40 to 50 million people in this country that are on statins. And likely as a result, the rate of heart attacks dropped precipitously in this country in the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. Unfortunately, it's starting to creep back up again, but that's probably because of the epidemics, the twin epidemics of diabetes and obesity, unfortunately. Okay, with that as the preface, with that being said, when we talk about the research about statins, we do have to keep in mind that there are two different kinds of people out there. There's what we call primary prevention, which is when you just have risk factors and you don't have known disease and you haven't had an event. And then there's what we call secondary prevention. Secondary meaning it's second to you've had an event, and now we're dealing with the aftermath of that event. Okay, but when we talk about events, we can also talk about calcium scores, because if your calcium score is high enough that it puts you in, say, the 75th percentile or the 90th percentile, then effectively the research shows that you have the equivalent level of risk to a secondary prevention patient. What does that mean? You may not have had a heart attack yourself, but your calcium score is high enough that your risk of a heart attack is the same as if you had a heart attack. Okay, so you can make an argument that in a primary prevention population, statins may not be as useful as we have historically thought them to be, or we've been told that they are by lots of doctors out there. You can make an argument. And the data, I mean, again, you can quibble about the data, but you can make that argument, and you're not crazy. In secondary prevention, you can't make that argument. The data is so clear, it is really inarguable that statins lead to benefit. How do they lead to benefit? Really effectively three ways. They reduce your cholesterol. Well, okay, does that matter? Well, yeah, it does. We know from a lot of research that the lower your cholesterol is, the lower your risk of heart attack is. Okay. They stabilize plaque, preventing plaque rupture. This has been proven in lots of clinical research as well. And stabilizing plaque leads to reduced risk of heart attack, sudden heart attack. And again, in a secondary prevention population, statins at appropriate dosages can lower heart attack risk by 50%. That's a big number. 50% is a big number. The third thing that statins can do, and it's been shown again in lots of well-done research, is that they can promote regression of plaque, which is the fancy doctor way of saying they can melt plaque away. And so these three different approaches, these three different attributes of statins show that they can lead to benefit. Like you asked, do they really benefit people? The answer is yes. And you can see that in lots of different markers. We know that statins have anti-inflammatory properties, and in some studies have shown to be able to lower CRP levels, which is a marker of inflammation. Statins definitively lower apolipoprotein B levels. They lower LDL particle numbers, whether they're small particles or large particles. They lower total particle number, which lowers both of them. And we know, as I said earlier in this conversation, when you lower ApoB, when you lower LDL-P, you have a lower risk of cardiac event.
All right. Well, thank you very much for talking to me today. And
my pleasure.
I'm going to get some blood work done. Okay, so now that we have the different blood measurements from Dr. Liberman that actually track meaningfully with heart disease, ApoB, total LDL particle number, and non-HDL cholesterol total, I'm going to go get blood work done initially to see what I am on those three measurements. Then I'm going to take a statin for 6 weeks. Then I'm going to go back in and redo those three measurements and see if they've changed in any meaningful way. Okay, let's get to work. All right, going to get stuck one more time, get that blood drawn. Now for the results from my little statin study. And I have to admit, I was a little surprised. The first marker that Dr. Liberman mentioned was non-HDL cholesterol. We can see that over the course of the 6 weeks, it went from 128 down to 66, so almost decreased in half. The second marker that Dr. Liberman had mentioned was LDL particle number. It went from 1467 down to 991. Again, a substantial decrease. And the final measurement that Dr. Liberman had mentioned was ApoB, which went down from 82 down to 52. Not bad. So as you can see, the statin medication had a profound effect on the markers that Dr. Liberman had mentioned actually track meaningfully with heart disease. And that gets to the second lesson from my cautionary tale about statins. If you have existing heart disease, I would highly recommend, and it's my opinion, that you not listen to social media experts, YouTube videos, information from the internet, or even information from some functional medicine doctors on whether or not to take a statin. I really feel that that decision is best held in the hands of your cardiologist because those are the individuals that were trained to make that decision with you. I also want to say that I am so glad that that is the approach that I took, and I'm going to be on a statin for the foreseeable future. I hope you guys will join me in the upcoming weeks on one of our future episodes where we look at, are there any ways to mitigate some of the well-known side effects from statin? All right, thank you so much. Please like the video, please subscribe if you want more of this material, and have a great day.